This is my Faust comic book series review. So I had never heard of the Faust series until last year when I was at a show in October of 2023 to see Morbid Tales. I was hanging out with Ben Falgu, and I had asked him what his first tattoo was, and he told me it was one on his back, which was made, it was based off of the Faust comic book series, or Faust, but I say Faust, whatever. I had never heard of the Faust series at all, and so when I got home, I looked it up and I started reading it. Faust, the series is it was sort of like a modern day take on the classic tale by Goethe, if that's how you pronounce it correctly. Though to me this is a rather loose comparison. It's a rather loose take on the classic tale. So the main character in this tale is John Jaspers, who is a mental patient and troubled artist. The story itself has problems. There's a lot of things that didn't make sense to me, but were rather vital bits of information. I had a hard time following the plot because a lot of it was just written in a poor way, and I want to emphasize written. The actual writing to the story was very poor. That said, the series is drawn by Tim Vigil. So the art was all created by Tim Vigil, and the story is written by David Quinn. I have no idea how this collaboration came to be, but there was a huge difference in the talent between the two. Tim Vigil, a well-loved artist to this day, created phenomenal art for this series. The covers to every issue of the comic are absolutely amazing, beautiful pieces of art. They are bloody and raw, and they're adult themed. This whole thing is adult themed, mind you. But the technicality of Tim Vigil's art is something I think everybody would just stop and look at. And I think, in general, that is what caught people's eyes with this series, Tim Vigil's art. It is so dark, esoteric, and sensual. Each cover is a beautiful piece of art on its own. Vigil's style doesn't change very much over the nearly 3 decades that this series takes place. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, actually. The series started around 1989 and it ended in 2015. And his art only changed by improvement. It got better. Vigil's examples of anatomy became more realistic and natural as the series moved on. Personally, I think that some of the examples, though, of women didn't really add up. They would be strange sometimes, but not grotesquely so. I say this as a woman, and, I just think a lot about those times where there would be breasts to a character, and a character would be drawn upside down or something like that, and the breasts would be perfectly in place. Real boobs move. In real life, if you were upside down, your boobs would hang towards your face. It's a small note, technically. It's a small note, really, but considering how many times the series shows nudity, I just wanted to point that out, Why aren't the boobs moving? I'm not sure. Vigil drew a lot of nudity. I remember seeing a lot of penises. So many penises. Some had their foreskins and some did not. There were some characters that would be drawn with and then drawn without their foreskin. I respect the diversity. it's very nifty, really. But going back to the story itself makes no sense. As depicted in the comics, the dialogue and notations they were made and did very little to glean on the idea behind it. If you read the series and you try to describe the plot, you may have little to go off of because the execution makes very little sense. There were so many times where I just had to stop and say, what? while I was reading, because I had no idea what David Quinn was trying to convey. Many times I felt like he had envisioned the comic as a movie. And so his writing would feel vague and Vigil's art would have to carry it. But I would still be unable to understand what he was trying to say. You know, the artist can only do so much. And with David Quinn acting like the comic was a movie, there were things that were lost in translation, if you understand what I mean. There were times that Quinn would write from the perspective of Jade DeCampo's diary. Jade was the love interest of the story. It was hard to read at times, literally. I'm pretty sure it was handwritten. Not sure by who. I assume maybe Quinn. But the handwriting was illegible at times. I know that this was for the sake of authenticity. Most people write when they have a journal. But I really believe that just using a standard font would have worked a lot better. I wanted to like the story, but it was hard. The writing itself was lackluster, and, well, but the visuals were amazing. I know there is the saying that good art triumphs a mediocre story. There's a Todd McFarlane quote about that. But I do believe it's important to hold a bad story accountable. The series uses rape as a plot device multiple times. But why? There's at least 2 instances, if not more. Some parts were for the sake of sex magic, but why? Why does this create other beings? Why does it have relevance to the matters going on and what later comes to be in the story? I would have liked to read a deeper explanation of this, and various other deeper explanations of the series, but this never happens. I don't think it would have been bad to just have a couple of issues, in between to explain other parts of the story. I mean, as someone who grew up on Dragon Ball Z, I have no problems with filler episodes. I think filler can be pretty good at times, which, being able to flesh out scenarios, flesh out characters, and things like that. If that's one thing I can easily say that this series suffers from, is that it doesn't flesh out characters enough. In general, there's not enough information about the characters. For me, I didn't see why I should care about any of the characters at all. Why should I care about Jade? Why should I care about Jaspers? It didn't make a very compelling argument to me. It feels like we're just supposed to take everything at face value. John is our anti-hero. He's crazy. He's an artist. He loves Jade. He's bad. But he kills bad people because he's sort of good. But he sort of has demons that talk to him, which get on his nerves. And he died, but he came back. He's hopelessly in love with Jade. And Jade is Jasper's lover. She was his psychiatrist, and they were having sex despite him being her patient. Near the end of the series, you find out that she's married, and she was cheating on her husband with Jasper's. And Jade also got a hysterectomy at some point in time, but it was never explained or known when this happened. It felt like the main characters were just a couple of random people. I didn't understand why we were supposed to care. Many things about John and Jade's relationship were cliche and followed various tropes and stereotypes. And of course, not every trope, not a trope doesn't mean bad. Tropes are not derogatory, but it was just the fact that it was the cliche and bad kind of tropes. You know what I mean? It made me shake my head. How many times John was supposed to be the crazy, misunderstood artist, and Jade was the soft, beautiful woman who could tame him. It was a trope that made me roll my eyes. That's really only because of the fact that it's like you're just rushed into caring about them. That's how it feels, like you're rushed and you're supposed to care about these characters. And like I said, it's like you haven't given me enough information to care, you know? All I know is like by issue number 4, we see John Jasper's butt naked everything. We see John Jasper's bare ass in issue number 4. Jesus. The series never explained why John was in the mental facility to begin with. Jade was his doctor, but you know, how did that happen? There's little tiny bits. It would be like a sentence or two, maybe a page of a little bit of backstory, but even then, that's not enough. It's like, okay, what even brought us to this scenario to begin with? It was only told that John was bad, and that's one of the tropes that I hated. Those are one of the bad tropes where it's like he's just bad, but why is he bad? They don't say that. They don't explain why. He was bad, but what did he do? What did he do that was bad to begin with? I just constantly found myself asking why. You know, why are these important plot devices? You know, why are we as an audience seeing these different points in the story? You know, like David Quinn, let me know. Tell me, why are you showing me this? Why are you telling me this? Nothing is really known about the background of John's character. He may have had a rough childhood, but that's all we know. We aren't told what may help us understand the reasons why John is the way he is. You know, maybe he's just a bad seed. Maybe a series of traumatic events caused him to be violent and crazy. But the series doesn't explain that, so we don't know. I think that we're supposed to just take Jasper's as he is and not think too much about that. It appeared to me that Jasper's was written with the mentality that he was just crazy and to accept it as it is. But there's a lot more to a person that makes them crazy, you know. He was crazy before death, but we're never told why. If you read this series on Wikipedia, you'll read this in the synopsis that Jasper's was hired to kill for M. Yet, reading through the series, this isn't talked about very much. If anything, it's barely touched on at all. The series portrays John as killing more randomly without reason, as opposed to it being an assignment. It seems to be a complete accident that he ended up killing people that were bad dudes. It never came off as a way to kill for M. And M, short for Mephistopheles, gave John the Wolverine claws that he would use to kill. But it wasn't like he was a soldier for M. It didn't feel like he was. Even though technically M kind of says that during one part. Like, oh, this is my, creation. Even though he was supposed to be, John never really came off as the satanic hitman. M is supposed to be the scary, mysterious, big company man that's ridiculously rich. He could have been a cool character, but he just wasn't fleshed out enough. I felt like he was dangled around as the obvious bad guy, but it felt late in the series that he was officially made so. John Jaspers just sort of wanders around, talking to himself and occasionally killing people. M didn't really show much of a reason to hate him or fear him. He was mostly just calm and collected until the orgies and occasional face biting. M's sidekick is his wife Claire. She's the BDSM baddie that is basically a one-trick pony. She's supposed to be the special woman for M's ritual, but he decides last minute to pull out of her and go with Jade instead. Claire's also like the extra ultra fan service. She's also the mega fan service character. But anyway, so M decides he's not going to use Claire for this ritual for like the end of the book or series, and he goes with Jade instead, and there's no explanation why. It wasn't even like a revenge thing towards John. Of course, this pisses off Claire, and she goes into a rage and she makes remarks about how Jade isn't anything special. And so, to get back at M, Claire tries to have revenge sex with John Jaspers because somehow that would evoke some kind of sex magic. And I don't know. I don't get it either. This isn't explained. John, of course, doesn't want Claire because he's so in love with Jade, and eventually gets to the top of M's mansion to engage in the final battle. Of course, the final battle. And I want to say, I didn't write this down, but I did think it was really cool the way that the soul contracts, people that sold their souls with M and had contracts in his mansion. I liked the concept that they were like rolled up scrolls of paper just in a room. And so when those were burned in the fire, the contracts were destroyed. I did think that was a very cool scene that Tim Vigil depicted. But anyway, so this just gets really like even more convoluted though, the story. So anyway, somewhere around here, the ending finale sequences, M vores Jade, and then he gives birth to her while looking like a pregnant member of the Fantastic Four. And they say flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood a few times, and it made me think of the DMX album. Yeah, I know, come on. But anyway, somehow being vored made Jade into a complete automaton that would do anything to please M. And I wrote down here in my review saying that there are so many shots of penises being put into holes throughout this series. And it's true. There is a lot. This series is very sexual. But anyway, as the series ends, M transforms into his final form, which honestly was very anticlimactic for me. He was just a naked man with tiny horns. And of course he had to be naked, right? But anyway, I thought that M's final form was really lame and a total letdown. With all of the awesome art that Tim Vigil created for the entire series, it was disappointing that his pregnant vor form was more cool to look at than his final form. So anyway, John fights M and beats him. Then Jade wakes up from whatever spell, and she then has to fight Claire, who wants to kill Jade because M chose her over Claire, which once again is never explained. So Jade then wins by pushing Claire into the demonic void that M created. The series begins like its finale sequence, like the very ending parts of the series, with the mansion collapsing and Jade having to escape, along with this other character who was this journalist that was completely pointless to the series as a whole. Jade is taken to the hospital, and the last few things she sees are horrors beyond mankind's comprehension. Which the art for this part is actually really amazing. Tim Vigil did exceptional in creating disgusting demons being the only sight that Jade could see. And so, of course, though, John and M are dead at the end. Tim Vigil's horror art is so good. I really did wish that there were more creatures like that shown in the series. But once again, back to the story itself, the ending makes no sense. The ending does not make sense. So after all of the hellish sights that Jade sees, you later see her healed in the hospital still, talking to the journalist and smoking in her hospital room. And the dialogue made it seem like she was in the hospital for 1 month at first, but then it was revealed that it had been 2 years. The journalist says to Jade, "Who held your hand a month ago when the docs tried to write you off as never coming back from bug fuck? You know, who held your hand a month ago?" Then in the next page, you see him leaving, saying, 2 years ago, who'd have thought we'd talk almost... Then on the next page, you see him leaving, saying, 2 years ago, who'd have thought we'd be talking almost like friends? So I suppose Jade was crazy for 2 years, then only came to a month before. I assumed that she was in the hospital for 2 years after the final battle. Like she just was seeing those visions, all of the demons and stuff for 2 years straight until a month ago, right? So then in the final page, Jade reveals that she got pregnant and is now going to be a mom, despite having a hysterectomy. Jade, pregnant. And that's how it ends. So, like I said, the story makes no sense. How could she hold the baby without having a uterus? This is never explained, and I guess the reader is supposed to ponder it. It doesn't leave any curious wonder. It left me confused. Of course, since no one's character was fleshed out, you don't know what type of hysterectomy they did to Jade and why they did it to begin with. You know, why they do it at all. Was it a partial hysterectomy? Was it because of endometriosis? How old is Jade anyway? And the best question of all is, how is Jade pregnant for 2 years in the hospital and no one knew? How was she pregnant for 2 years? That part doesn't make any sense at all. So anyway, none of this adds up without human or female anatomy works, you know. Jade might actually just have a tumor the size of an unborn child. I know that I'm not the demographic for this. This was made for men by men. And I'm not trying to shit on the things that people like. I just want to show the plot holes. For me, I separate the art from the story. The art is amazing. It really is. The art is very good. Very, very good. The art was good enough for me to get a tattoo of it. That's how much I love Tim Vigil's art. I have a tattoo of one of the creatures from the end of the series on my leg. It's just very good art, and they're beautiful. Just beautiful. But on the other side, the story is garbage. Written by David Quinn. It stinks. It's musty. I don't understand this collaboration of artist and writer because I really feel like David Quinn's writing is subpar and high school level. I don't believe that Quinn is good enough to... I don't think he's a good enough writer to coexist with Tim Vigil's art. I think Vigil's art deserves somebody that wouldn't have stinky plot holes. It's strange. It's strange. It's strange, that a story with such esoteric art is not very esoteric themed. Really, it's not as esoteric themed as you would think. 15 issues was not enough. There's only 15, really. 15 issues was not enough to properly convey anything David Quinn was trying to say. There's a lot of threads that just never went anywhere. The use of song lyrics disrupted the flow of the story at many times. And as someone who didn't listen to most of those songs, I didn't grow up with some of those songs that would be quoted in there, I had to assess what were lyrics and what was dialogue and what was trying to be described as the mood. It just felt cluttered at times, very cluttered. Though I will have to say, I'm pretty sure Danzig is quoted in one of the comics, and I knew, of course, fucking Danzig. But anyway, it felt cluttered, though, with the other stuff. I mean, and even though I know Danzig, it's like, why do we have to have song lyrics in here? I don't see the point. But anyway, I just feel like David Quinn tried too hard to make this into a movie. It's a comic, not a movie. It just didn't work for me. Anyway, the series is very rare from what I understand, and it has a cult following. I'm still an outsider. I don't know a lot about it, really. A lot of people are fans of Tim Vigil's art and follow him on Instagram, myself included. In some ways, it's so rare, the series, physically very rare, that you just can't even find a TV tropes page about it on the comic series. And there's not really any reviews about it. Some people have reviewed the issues on Goodreads, though the comics are, of course, so physically rare that there are various goo-gob entries that people have created. You'll find just weird versions. It's like, oh, this is issue number 5, but here's also issue 5, and here's other issue 5, and it's like, what is happening here, There's just little order and lots of chaos. And really, the Wikipedia page is pretty skeletal, too. It actually makes me wonder how many people have read the entire series. Probably not that much if reviews like mine are rare. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure if I would recommend this series as a story to read. Not for the story. It's a lot like Doom, and that Doom doesn't really have a story at all. But people love the game. People love the Doom series. If you come across Faust, I would say to check it out. Yes, check it out. Gaze upon the art of Tim Vigil. It just take the time to absorb everything he drew, everything he created. Faust isn't really a story. It's more of a vehicle to express Tim Vigil's creativity. I think that if you look at the series from this point of view, you'll have a greater understanding of why there's a cult following. Seeing it from this standpoint, I can look back and say, I did have a lot of fun, going through the issues. Just looking at the art is fun in itself. And so from an artistic point of view, I would say it's a great series indeed.